flour sack. Mama would put a strap around and hang it around my neck, and I could put cotton in that. But I worked.
Tammy Wynette was a force in country music and had an unforgettable voice. Her songs were always soul-stirring, but behind every powerful woman is a story the world rarely hears. While Tammy stood on stage singing about love and loyalty, her real life told a darker tale. Her marriage to George Richie was supposed to be her calm after the storm, but it became the storm itself. She battled addiction, underwent countless surgeries, and slowly disappeared from the spotlight, all under George's watchful eye. When she died, the truth didn't follow immediately, but the questions never stopped. Was George Richie her devoted husband, or the man who broke her beyond repair? Let's find out. The Queen of Country Music. Tammy Wynette was not merely a country music icon. She was often called First Lady of Country Music. Her powerful and emotional voice captured every fan deeply with each hit. But behind her stardom were pains, controversies, and hardship. Born in Mississippi in 1942, her parents named her Virginia Wynette Pugh. She had a tough childhood. Her father died when she was just 9 months old, and her mother worked long hours in a factory. Her grandparents primarily raised Tammy. Her early years were filled with hard work on the farm, helping in the fields, and taking care of animals. Even as a young girl, Tammy had big dreams. She loved music and taught herself to play instruments. After several failed marriages, she eventually trained as a hairdresser to support herself and her 3 daughters. But her heart was always with music. Tammy's songs often reflected the struggles she faced in her personal life. She was married 5 times, most famously to fellow country singer George Jones. Their relationship was both passionate and turbulent. The pair recorded many duets together and became country music royalty. But Tammy's private world was equally fraught. Despite fans seeing her as a survivor, she was battling severe health challenges just beneath the surface. The persona of a poised star masked a woman in pain, dealing with chronic illness and emotional turbulence that would soon expose the delicate balance between her public image and private reality. Behind the glittering lights and tear-streaked ballads, Tammy Wynette was waging a relentless war with her body. A 1970 hysterectomy, following the birth of her 4th daughter, triggered a painful infection and formed dense scar tissue that plagued her for years. From that moment, her health unraveled. Wynette underwent at least 26 major surgeries: gallbladder removal, kidney procedures, vocal cord nodule extractions, and then operations to repair the scars those surgeries left behind. In the early 90s, a bile duct blockage and life-threatening infection landed her in a coma, nearly taking her life. Despite these grueling ordeals, she refused to let illness halt her commitments, continuing to record, tour, and appear on stage even when she was suffering. Painkillers became her constant companions. What began as prescribed relief for her abdominal agony evolved into a crippling dependency. Over time, she leaned on a cocktail of Valium, Demerol, and Dilaudid, first orally, then via injection. She even scheduled tour bus stops at hospitals just to replenish her supply. Her road crew administered injections following doctors' instructions, and when physicians refused further prescriptions, she sourced them anonymously from other clinics. Her addiction was not Hollywood hyperbole, it was painfully honest and widely recognized. In November 1986, Wynette entered the Betty Ford Center for treatment, publicly acknowledging she never took hard substance. "I just needed something to ease pain," honestly owning her situation. Soon after, she returned to the hospital with stomach blockages. Scar tissue from surgical complications had narrowed her intestines, and 90 minutes on the table later, doctors removed a quarter of her stomach only to plunge her back into more pain and more pills. Yet, she persisted. Concerts and recordings continued even as fans noticed a distinct change. She often appeared sedated, her vivacious voice dulled by pills. Some backup singers recalled stepping in when Tammy was too medicated to hit her high notes. Friends admitted they'd seen her in a haze, yet she'd still force herself onto the stage, determined to honor her craft. Tammy lived in pain, one close observer said, but some believe she was kept in that pain by someone close. While she fought to manage her agony, more than one account suggests her vulnerability was exploited. Overprescribing, suspicious doctor visits, and strange behavior patterns fueled rumors that her dependence might have been controlled or amplified by those entrusted to care for her. By her final years, her illness demanded oxygen and IVs, and injections remained routine right up until she died in 1998. In the glow of her powerful vocals and iconic hits, a darker narrative endured, a tale of a star who found no relief, trapped in an endless cycle of surgeries and narcotics, navigating fame through pain that never waned. This duality, a strong public image disguising a life dictated by suffering, is the foundation of the mystery that still haunts Tammy Wynette's legacy. Her marriage to George Richie. Tammy married her fifth husband, who stayed with her through her final years, George Richie, in July 1978. Richie was a respected songwriter and producer, but following their wedding, he also became Tammy's full-time manager. Almost immediately, he took control not just of her schedule and finances, but of her access to the outside world. His influence on her was so strong that all her friends and even her family members began complaining that they usually had little or no idea about what was happening in her life. However, it wasn't always like that. At first glance, Richie appeared to be a stabilizing force. After Tammy's fraught relationship with George Jones, this seemed like a promising fresh start, yet friends and family soon began to raise concerns. As a result, it became tough for the public to believe that the same man who helped stabilize her could also be the devil weighing her down. It took a confession by Georgette Jones, Tammy's daughter by George Jones, to get people to believe that Tammy was going through a lot. Georgette later revealed that Richie deliberately kept her mother from her close circles. Jackie Daly, another daughter, alleged that Richie helped to enable Tammy's drug and painkiller use. Singer Lori Morgan even suspected that Richie was more interested in property and profits than Tammy. Everyone who doubted these women's confessions began to believe them when Richie later made himself the sole gatekeeper for their wealth and life. He had to approve all interactions, such as family visits, interviews, and meetings. Her friends later pointed out that Tammy lived in fear and became almost a prisoner in her own home. Later in 1984, a rumor started where Tammy claimed that she had been kidnapped. Still, her daughter Jackie later told the public that those words were just rumors that Richie forced Tammy to begin because he needed her to cover up the injuries that she had sustained from being severely abused by him. Jackie claimed that Richie wanted the wounds to heal, and he did not need anyone to see what he had done to her skin. So he forced her to stay indoors till the injuries cleared from her skin and she was able to hide any traces with makeup. When Richie heard of these claims, he strongly denied them, but this did not prevent the seed of mistrust from being sown into the hearts of everyone. During interviews, Tammy always expressed love and loyalty toward Richie, even co-writing emotionally resonant songs with him. But family and insiders told a darker version of Richie as a caring manager and a controlling partner. Her daughters constantly said that the relationship was an emotionally abusive one. When the heat began to get to Tammy, she silently confided in some confidants that Richie was dictating her medications, choosing her doctors, and managing her income. As Tammy's health deteriorated during the 90s, Richie's position became even more central. He coordinated her doctor's appointments, administered her narcotic injections, and arranged her transportation. According to reports, all of this was done with the mindset of becoming her primary caretaker, but this perceived caregiving masked something more sinister. Several close associates later claimed that he gave her additional medications beyond prescriptions and sometimes ignored medical advice. By Tammy's demise, Richie's image as benefactor and protector was deeply intertwined with troubling allegations of control. 3 daughters and close friends later expressed grave concern, revealing a woman who once stood tall but ended her days secluded, heavily medicated, and increasingly isolated. The narrative that began with love and collaboration transitioned into one of suspicion and fear, making Richie the man at the center of a tragic and scandalous story. The day she died. On the 6th of April, 1998, Tammy Wynette was found unresponsive on a living room couch in her Nashville home, just a day after complaining of burning pain in her leg. It was reported that George Richie slept close to her, but somehow he only discovered her lifeless body later that evening. She was only 55 years old. At first, Richie adhered to advance directives allegedly declared by Tammy, refusing to take her to a hospital. Instead, he summoned her doctor, Wallace Marsh, from Pennsylvania. Marsh diagnosed her demise as resulting from a pulmonary embolism, which is simply a blood clot in her lung, and issued a demise certificate accordingly. As a result of this act done by the doctor, no autopsy was then conducted on her body as of then, since the source of her demise had already been diagnosed. Within mere days, Tammy was buried, and people could not help but wonder what the rush was all about. A public memorial drew around 1,500 mourners to Nashville's Ryman Auditorium on the 9th of April, while a private service was held earlier. Her close friends and some family members said that they didn't want her to be buried so quickly. Still, Richie stressed that Tammy wished that she would have a swift burial, and according to him, she also stated before she died that she did not want her body to be disturbed. This did not sit well with the general public, especially when they looked at the situation surrounding her demise. She died unexpectedly, in her 50s, under home care, even more so, with someone in control of her medical treatment. As if to make matters worse, Richie kept Tammy's daughters at arm's length, and all of them grew very skeptical of how their mother truly died. In April 1999, Tina, Jackie, Georgette, and Donna filed a wrongful death suit seeking $50 million. They accused both Richie and Dr. Marsh of over-medicating her and failing to act when she was seriously ill. They claimed that Richie refused medical advice, including from Marsh, who had urged him to take Tammy to a hospital when she first exhibited symptoms. Later, her brother-in-law had Tammy exhumed for a second autopsy, and the results were extremely shocking. That investigation concluded she died from cardiac arrhythmia caused by chronic blood clot damage. No embolism was discovered. Autopsy results also found sedatives, including Versed and Phenergan, in her system. The medical examiner noted that while drugs were present, the exact role they played remained unclear. The death was ultimately ruled natural. Still, pressing questions lingered. Why did Richie refuse a hospital visit? Why was there no autopsy initially? Why were Tammy's daughters shut out until after her burial? In the days leading to her death, she was reportedly very ill and weak, yet friends said they weren't allowed to see her. Alana Nash, one of their family friends, recalled that Tammy appeared ancient, like a plant that had withered in a final video, prompting concern but no intervention. By the time answers began to emerge from legal filings and medical reports, Tammy Wynette's family and many fans felt the grave was already sealed. What was initially deemed a natural, though unfortunate end, had transformed into a chilling tale of isolation, possible neglect, and unanswered questions. In demise, as in life, she remained at the mercy of the man closest to her, and the truth remained on hold. The lawsuit and the truth uncovered. 18 months after Tammy Wynette's death, in April 1999, her 4 daughters, Tina, Jackie, Georgette, and Donna, filed a $50 million wrongful demise lawsuit. Named in the suit were husband-manager George Richie, Dr. Wallace Marsh, Tammy's attending physician, and Care Solutions, Inc., the company delivering prescription drugs to her home. The filing ignited a wildfire of public scrutiny, bringing to light damning new details about Tammy's final days. At the heart of the lawsuit was one harrowing claim, and that was the fact that Tammy was over-medicated and she was driven to her demise by an overdose of prescription. Documents showed that, late in life, she had a catheter fitted to her abdomen to inject pain meds directly into her bloodstream, and she was regularly scheduled for large shipments of drugs, including life-saving but powerful sedatives like Versed, midazolam, and Phenergan. In addition to this, a toxicology test was carried out on her body, and the results of the test show multiple sedative compounds, including Versed and Phenergan. Though called initially for having died from a pulmonary embolism, the new findings emphasized that cardiovascular issues from chronic pain and binding sedatives contributed to heart irregularities and arrhythmia. The medical examiner's report concluded that while the medical interventions had a physiological impact, her demise was ultimately ruled natural, stemming from cardiac arrhythmia compounded by drug treatment. It didn't end here, though. Her family, friends, and even observers were shocked at the scale of medication. They even pressed that such high doses of substances should be considered illegal, and the people responsible for making her inject such a high level of substance should face the full extent of the law. One expert even told interviewers it was not uncommon to see heavy narcotic use in terminal disease, but Tammy was 55 years old and still very active. Friends and family questioned why so many sedatives were administered with such frequency. This led to the lawsuit, which just brought out more allegations of neglect. Dr. Marsh testified he had urged Richie to take Tammy to a hospital when she complained of leg pain, but Richie refused, opting to follow her wishes instead. Per evidence provided by Richie, Tammy had written directives that she did not want invasive measures, but critics argued the refusal itself contributed to a preventable death. This discovery led to people asking if this was a tragic culmination of chronic illness or a chilling example of over-medication. Nevertheless, in October 2000, MTV reported that family insiders believed the substance cocktail was lethal. According to the report, she was hooked on painkillers so powerful they affected her temperament and physical strength. The toxicology report fueled their concerns. Yet in 2001, the wrongful demise lawsuit ended abruptly with the dismissal of Richie as a defendant, the dropping of charges against Care Solutions, and a confidential settlement with Dr. Marsh. No public trial meant no precise legal reckoning. The dismissal left many questions unanswered and reinforced the narrative of tragedy and suspicion. Everyone walked away with a series of questions bubbling through their minds. Was Tammy's demise a heartbreaking medical inevitability, or did someone facilitate her decline? Headlines and documentaries continued to ask, was she over-medicated, dumb, or slowly silenced? The balance between compassion and caution had blurred, and a shadow lingered. That lawsuit gave her daughters and fans a voice, but it also exposed an uncomfortable truth. Fame, trust, and medical care, all interwoven, can be fragile. Was this a case of irreversible neglect, or perhaps something more sinister? Even 2 decades later, those questions remain unresolved in one more verse of the tragedy that defined Tammy Wynette's final act and her enduring legend. The cover-up. As the lawsuit faded from headlines, whispers of a cover-up began to surface. People started to spread rumors of missing records, financial exploitation, and decisions made behind closed doors. The mystery deepened everywhere it touched. One controversy emerged immediately after Tammy's death. It was said that Tammy kept personal notes and that she also had a detailed yellow legal pad which outlined her estate and trust for her daughters. But after she died, all of that surprisingly went missing. Her daughters spoke passionately about how their mother's will had disappeared, and this just made more people grow more suspicious that someone desperately wanted control over all that she left behind. It didn't take long before Richie stepped in and asserted total authority over Tammy's financial affairs. Documents revealed he received $1 million from her life insurance, plus another $1.4 million from a separate policy, an income surge critics suggested came at the expense of her daughters, who allegedly were cut out of inheritance benefits. To the general public, it seemed as if this man had successfully manipulated his way into Tammy's life and also went on to cut her off from her family and friends, and in her demise, he still managed to reap so much benefit from it. Everyone hated how this affected the people close to her. It was not a crime for him to have gotten some part of her inheritance, but it just appeared as if Richie was the only person who benefited from the death of Tammy Wynette. The other family members were not allowed even to come close to taking anything valuable that belonged to her. Even if they needed it to remember her, it was not given to them. Everything was given to Richie. As if that was not enough, the tombstone drama came. In 2012, after legal efforts, Richie changed the name engraved on her crypt from Tammy Wynette to Virginia W. Richie, her legal name. He did this without consulting anybody or even informing her family about it. Her daughters felt betrayed. They argued that even in his demise, he was still controlling their mother. They said, "Our mother was never truly free, not even in the end." However, Tammy's daughters were not going to allow him to keep having such a considerable influence over her life, so they came together in unity and initiated a fan-launched petition with over 3,000 signatures. The weight of this petition made the court order a reversion to Tammy Wynette in 2014. Throughout this saga, the evidence painted a troubling picture. A woman whose illness became isolated, whose final months were negotiated behind locked doors and secret protocols. Tampering allegations, financial gain, and narrative control all pivoted around George Richie, raising uncomfortable questions about whether love or leverage drove his actions. Critics argued he manipulated her physical fragility to maintain dominance. Medical records vanished. Funeral arrangements bypassed the family. Her legal identity was overwritten, restored only with legal intervention years later. Every move pointed to someone orchestrating how Tammy Wynette's story ended, even after her voice had fallen silent. Family insiders often say they had no choice. One daughter described the stigma. He isolated her physically, emotionally, and even in demise, she remained captive to his decisions. Today, the cover-up theories fuel one enduring question. Was this the final act of a protective spouse honoring wishes, or the final chapter of hidden abuse? Many people still argue that it is the latter. After all, there is a lot of evidence pointing to that. For example, the purposeful absence of records and the fact that Richie's decision was rushed and mostly done secretly, without informing her family. All these pointed to the fact that he had so much to hide, and his biggest fear was that his secrets would be discovered someday. However, the mystery has not been solved because no court has found any wrongdoing in Richie's actions. People are confused as to why he has not been found guilty yet, and many people are still hoping for the day that he will be discovered as a liar. What happened to George Richie? After Tammy Wynette's passing in 1998, George Richie, a man at the center of both her professional revival and her darkest secrets, vanished from the spotlight. This behavior was already anticipated by many people who were more than sure that this man had something to do with the passing of Tammy, and it seemed as if nothing he said made them think otherwise. Instead of accepting public interviews and those heartfelt tributes, Richie chose to remain silent, and instead of explaining, he chose privacy. People believed he stayed away from the public because he didn't want an overzealous journalist asking him several questions and finally getting him to say what everyone expected. Richie kept mute for the 12 years that he survived Tammy for, and the public never got any concrete information about what happened to her. In 2001, just 3 years after Tammy's death, Richie quietly remarried Sheila Slaughter, a former Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. They shared one daughter, Tatum, and left behind little media fanfare. Only insiders and close friends know of this brief new chapter. His life had shifted. He was no longer manager of a superstar, but husband and father in relative obscurity. Throughout the 2000s, Richie remained conspicuously silent. He avoided the press and declined to participate in documentaries or interviews. The void only fueled speculation. Did he refuse to defend himself, or was he hiding something? His silence became his most persistent statement. Tragically, in August 2010, George Richie died at age 74 from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. He was laid to rest near Tammy Wynette in the Woodlawn Memorial Park Mausoleum in Nashville, a final permanent connection. His funeral was quiet, reflecting the man who preferred shadows to spotlights. For years, the story seemed complete: a reclusive widower, remarriage, withdrawal, and death. But more recently, new interviews and documentaries have reignited interest in his complex legacy. Since Tammy's demise, her daughters and close friends have spoken out, painting a chilling picture. Georgette Jones, Tammy's daughter with George Jones, described their mother as emotionally abusive in her final years, with Richie as the architect and jailer of the home she once knew. Others echoed that sentiment. George controlled every aspect of her life. She wasn't just addicted, she was trapped. This theme runs consistently through books like Tammy Wynette, Tragic Country Queen, and memoirs from her daughters. Musical documentaries such as CMT's autobiographical retrospectives and the Showtime miniseries, George and Tammy don't shy away from these darker implications. They explore how, post-marriage, Tammy's world shrank under Richie's influence. He fired the female road crew to eliminate outside contact, managed her finances with precision, and, according to insiders, dictated every painkiller dosage. Richie's alleged control extended beyond scheduling. His grip over Tammy's medication, especially narcotics, added another coil to the intrigue. Friends described the singer as increasingly sedated. One former collaborator described her as too medicated to function but still forced to perform. Those accounts echo the haunting theory. This was not self-destruction, but calculated manipulation. By refusing interviews, Richie avoided facing these claims. He took his side offline, and even in demise, he never said a word. No public defense, no trial, just the lingering question: why so much silence? After his passing, Sheila Slaughter Richie and Richie's children briefly defended his legacy. Sheila regretted the continued negativity, stating she didn't understand the controversies fully, but didn't intend to dishonor Tammy. Still, this couldn't quell the decades of suspicion. In recent years, renewed media attention has reopened the conversation. Shows like George and Tammy dramatize it. Podcasts dig deep into audio archives. Articles ask, was Tammy merely ill and vulnerable, or was she systematically restrained? The narrative has shifted away from acceptance toward accountability. Even though Richie never publicly explained his decisions, his absence spoke volumes. He became the ghost in Tammy's final act, and in his demise, he remained locked in the closet of a mystery he took with him. Today, the echoes are clear. A woman who once gave her soul to a song, overshadowed and perhaps subdued by the man who helped write those hits. Her legacy and the questions that remain. Tammy Wynette gave her voice and her heart to country music. Songs like Stand By Your Man weren't just chart toppers, they were declarations, powerful yet vulnerable. But behind that melodic facade was a life entangled in pain, addiction, and control. Regardless of her success, her daughters usually asked, did anyone ever truly stand by Tammy? Or did they, in turn, push her to stand alone? Her legacy is undeniable. She remains a towering figure with 20 #1 songs and numerous accolades, including inductions into the Country Music Hall of Fame and the Grammy Hall of Fame. Artists from Loretta Lynn to contemporary voices like Casey Musgraves cite her as a guiding light. She paved the way for women in country music, a genre often dominated by men. But for all her influence, her story is a cautionary tale of not just stardom, but its price. Stand By Your Man sold millions, became a cultural phenomenon, and crafted Tammy's public identity. But her private life diverged from that image. Her children, particularly Georgette, have said she was never truly free. The granddaughter's memoir, The Three of Us, unpacks the dissonance between Tammy's public composure and private suffering, a testament to a woman caught between performance and pain. Her health battles were relentless. She had 30-plus surgeries and constant pain, but perhaps more devastating was her control over her life. Pain management by syringe and catheter, carried out under the direction of someone she trusted. Tamar's demise was ruled natural, yet echoes of manipulation and isolation haunt the verdict. Today, conversations around her legacy reflect modern awareness. Because of what happened to her, people constantly examine how fame can breed vulnerability. They also question if medical care, even in the hands of loved ones, can become a tool for control. Scholars, podcasters, and musicians have turned her story into a focal point, a tragic lesson on the thin line between care and coercion. Regardless of everything going on with her, artists continue to honor her. Dolly Parton performed "I Will Always Love You" in 1998 at Tammy's memorial. Exhibits, documentaries, and new shows like George and Tammy revive her narrative, but now with nuance. The hitmaker, the sufferer, the survivor. Yet, for all the tributes, questions linger. Did "Stand By Your Man" reinforce harmful expectations? Tammy spoke it as truth, but could it have masked her isolation? Did fans love the music but ignore the message? Only time will tell the balance. In recent interviews and biographies, including her daughter's memoirs and Jimmy McDonough's tragic country queen, the same refrain appears. Tammy Wynette was a brilliant artist, but a damaged soul. She became a hero of heartbreak, but never quite the heroine of her own story. Tammy Wynette stands as a mirror of strength and vulnerability, public persona and private suffering. Her voice remains eternal, but her story unfinished. The questions persist. Who stood by her? Who held her hand through pain? And will we, in remembering her, honor the complexity she lived? In the end, the First Lady of Country Music Song of Loyalty. Now it's our turn to stand by Tammy, to listen, learn, and never let her memory be silenced again. So, what do you think? Was Tammy Wynette truly a victim of circumstance, or was there more going on behind closed doors than anyone dared to admit? Did George Richie protect her or control her until the very end? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the lives behind the legends.